welcome to what will no doubt be a really insightful and interesting session. If I could ask my panelists to come and join me up on the stage. We have Anna Lober-Martin, who is Director for Interior Design for ARC International Design Consultants. Welcome, thank you. Mario Ferraro, who is CEO of Smeralda Holding and Sardinia Resorts. And lastly, Abdulrahman Abaalkhail, who's CEO of Dan Company. Please do come and join me. Welcome to the stage, all of you, and good morning again, everyone, and it's a delight to be here. As introduced, my name is Jules. I'm CEO of Lotus and Lotus Arabia. We are a PR, communications, events and marketing consultancy specialising in the travel, hospitality and tourism sector, promoting brands across the world from our global offices. It's a delight to be here this morning. We have a fantastic panel with a huge amount of knowledge, experience and insight to share with us. So I'm just going to ask them all to, first of all, start with a little bit of introduction about what they do, just to set the scene. So perhaps, Abdulrahman, we could come to you. You have a very interesting mandate with Dan Company, perhaps challenging some of the perceptions that so many people still have about Saudi Arabia. You're looking to promote and grow rural tourism, to grow sustainable projects with the community at the heart of those. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Thank you, Jules. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Is it loud enough? Okay. So first of all, let me just tell you more about Dan's strategy. Dan Company is a PIF-owned company, and the mandate of Dan is to contribute to the development of the tourism sector by embracing the captivating nature of Saudi Arabia. By doing so, we do have, our mission comes with two folds. One is building on the owned assets and the franchise assets. When it comes to the owned assets, we are building our own themed resorts, agriculture resort, adventure resort, and eco resort, in which we own a brand. We have created a national champion agri-hospitality brand, and that is ready to be launched around the Q4 of this year. On the other side of it, we have the franchise assets model, in which we have created another brand that will be lended to the farm owners, to the lodge facility owners, in which we become an enabler to help them to create the day-use experience and overnight experience. In that case, we play the role of the agri-resort developers, real estate developer, real estate operator, and also enabler, and a technology company at the same time, because you are lending all the technology solutions to our partners. When it comes to what's in it for the communities, there is a lot. First of all, let me start with Dan name. Dan name, it means it actually. Dan name comes from the Holy Quran. It's a pure Arabic word, which means something close, near, and approachable. And that put us at the heart of the community. And whatever we do is goes to the community. There is a lot that we can do. I'm not talking here about Dan itself. I'm talking about Dan. I'm talking about what Dan could create in terms of a ripple effect to the market. Once we enable the farm owners, and that would help them to create their own fresh income from their asset that has been idle for a long time. That creates a fresh income, new jobs, permanent jobs that will be created. And more jobs means more families, more permanent jobs that will be created, and that it creates more sustainable solutions. Once you add everything together, the owned asset, the franchise asset, and the ripple effect to the market itself, that creates a very much sustainable ecotourism sector. And those, I wouldn't call them tier 2 cities. These are rural destinations. That requires a lot of attention, and they have a lot to give to the market.
I think that's one of the really kind of critical points of destination building today, that it has the community at the heart of it, and that it's for the benefit of the community. And it's really interesting to see the work you're doing. Coming on to you, Mario, you're at the other end of the scale. So what Abdulrahman is doing is very much about starting a destination. You are in charge of one of the most famous, well-known European destinations, devised, created in the 60s and the 1970s to attract an affluent, wealthy, fun-loving crowd. How have you evolved that destination to still be relevant for today and attract today's affluent traveller?
Costa Smeralda has always been a very exclusive destination with a very unique and compelling value proposition. But like, over time, products can become a bit obsolete. And at one stage, the product offering of the destination, the way it was managed, the way it was marketed, just became obsolete, right? So we had to refresh the product, change our approach in how we market and distribute our destination. And we did some very simple changes. For instance, all our hotels were operated by the same entity and all with the same brand. And they all had a very similar design and very similar offering within the hotels, right? So we changed that. We rebranded the hotels, we differentiated the design, we differentiated the offering of the hotels, and that allowed us to target a wider audience of customers by having a diverse portfolio of hotels. But it increased also our distribution capacity by having more operators and more brand promoting our destination. So that was one thing we did. Then we added components that were missing. We enriched, for instance, our food and beverage offering by bringing in international food and beverage brands. We added a wellness proposition. We increased sports facilities. We created a stronger component for kids and families. And with all these things, we managed to extend the season, bring into the destination a much larger amount of customers over the years. And so today, the Costa Smeralda is again on top and continues to be the playground for billionaires in the world in the summer.
I think that diversification of offering is so important, isn't it? And bringing in some of those international brand names that you've brought in to have those kind of iconic hero brands in the destination is so important. Anna, Mario has talked about differentiation of design. Mm-hmm. Obviously, what you do is about bringing the destination into the hotel, into the hospitality project, making sure that the hotel is reflective of the destination. How do you do that, and how do you involve local communities, local artists, etc., into that?
So it's really fundamental to understand the culture of the locations. There are many elements that we can bring in to the design and to the experience of the customer that will enhance the link to the place. For example, local art and decor, but also materiality, local architecture, even things like local cuisine we can bring into the F&B offer, for example. But having the community engaged through special programs that can be, for example, guided tours or cultural workshops, or even doing events at the hotel like music shows, art exhibitions. So all of those things can get the community really involved. I think it's also quite important to get local companies, local businesses involved with the hotel, like, for example, creating tailor-made packages for the customers. It can be in restaurants, it can be in shops, it can be in recreational activities. So all of that can really create the perfect background. And there's also a very important thing that the previous talk mentioned, that it's about educating and training the staff, because they are really your connection, your human connection as you arrive at the hotel. And so having that bond and training your staff to know the place, to know the particularities, to know the experiences that you can have and properly advise the guests can really be fundamental. From a design point of view, what I mentioned, so we must make sure that all these elements, like the art aspects, the cultural references, even the architectural details, that we carefully select those things so that they are in tune with the values of the brand itself, so that they reinforce the brand, but create something unique and authentic at the same time. So it's very challenging and really quite nice to do.
There's actually a lot of crossover between what you're doing and also what Abdulrahman is doing in terms of really pulling out the local traditions, the local culinary style, the local craftsmanship. I guess a challenge for you in some ways is how do you develop that and showcase that whilst ensuring that those traditions and that authenticity stays true to itself whilst modernizing? Is that how do you strike that balance?
It's actually, I will start with what just she mentioned, and our perspectives, or at least what we do at Dan, it's a three pillars thing. So it's first of all about the context, engagements, and partnerships. What we do, and this is what we have done in our first destination, Al Ahsa. It's about understanding the local context. We need, first of all, we need to educate ourselves about the local communities. Because we come from more metropolitan cities, so we need to understand the context of the local community itself. What do they eat? How do they live? What kind of arts and crafts, etc. And when we say this, we actually go and live there. So we ask our business partners, lead designers, contractors, whoever is going to work with us, go and live there for some time. Mingle with people, just to understand what they do. And then the second thing is about the engagement with the local with the local authorities. The stakeholders in those areas are much more than what you could find in the metropolitan, because the value chain is not as clear as what you could find in the main cities. And the last one, which is the most important thing, is about partnerships with SMEs. How do we know all this information? We need to partner up with subject matter experts from the local market, those people who are experienced in food and art, architectural heritage, etc. All of this have to be fed in the design. Otherwise, without all these things, whatever you are going to produce, the local market will not accept it. So it has to be done from day one, and the first starting point is to educate ourselves before we go and put that money and we inject in the business.
And that comes back to kind of the authenticity of a destination, doesn't it? Really making sure that, like you say, working with stakeholders, partners, and that authenticness comes through everything you're doing. And I think that's one of the trends that we're seeing in destination building at the moment, that travelers, visitors want authentic destination experiences. They want to feel that they are scratching below the surface of the destination. They're meeting the people, they are having an experience that perhaps they couldn't have anywhere else. So it's really true to where they're visiting. Anna, what other trends do you see coming through? Abdulrahman talked about, gastronomy, culinary. Are these the kind of consumer trends that you see coming through in the guest experience requirement?
Yes, I think we also need to consider the technology aspect, because more and more that's coming into every aspect of our lives and into hospitality for sure. And I think the trick is really to seamlessly stitch together technology and authenticity. And I think there are ways to do that through the way you design the interfaces, through virtual reality, etc. But we can talk specifically about that later. I think in talking about trends in hospitality, we can also talk about personalization. So the guests are looking for personalized experiences. And so the clients, the designers, the brands need to make sure that we tailor-made those experiences to the specific tastes and wants of the client. I think there's also a growing demand for the well-being sector. So hospitality linked to spas, to gyms, to all of these, even to healthcare, that more and more is becoming also a hospitality experience. So I think all of that combined with this community sense and local flair is being sort of what is on the table for hospitality today.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the kind of how we merge technology with tradition
Yes.
Because we are all living in a very technical world where we expect things to be very kind of high tech, but then we also want
Yes.
the
Exactly.
authenticity and we want the tradition as well that gives us the realness of the experience of a destination.
Exactly.
Mario, for you, you are particularly looking at a premium audience. What are they demanding? You've talked about bringing in international brands. Anna's touched on spa and wellness. Are those the kind of things that are driving people to the destination of the Costa Smeralda still?
Look, the key success factor of our destination since its inception has always been the authenticity of the place, right? The Sardinian culture, the Sardinian food, the beautiful nature and the beautiful beaches, right? But at one stage, that was not enough anymore, right? Because we could see that our customer base was aging and we could not attract younger generations, right? So we had to add some components that younger generations were looking for, curated experiences, beach clubs, branded restaurants, health-conscious people were looking for wellness, for sports facilities. So by adding all of these things, by diversifying the tourism offering of the destination, we could manage to stay relevant and to attract also the younger, wealthy generations who today are representing the majority of our customer base.
It's interesting how you've identified the fact that the aging visitor leaves a problem for you. And I guess one of the things that's interesting for us all here when we look at building Saudi as a destination, as an emerging tourism destination, and then within that, the regional destinations, how do you future-proof a destination? What makes it somewhere that people will come back to? What makes it compelling to visit on a repeated basis? You have a very loyal customer base that will come back year after year after year. And that's a real skill as a destination, to build somewhere that people want to revisit. For those of us in the room who are involved in building Saudi from the ground up from a tourism perspective, what advice would you give? What would be the key things to building in legacy to your destinations?
I think, first of all, it's very important that you need to establish very clearly where do you want to position yourself, what do you want to be, what kind of value proposition do you want to build up, and what kind of customers you want to attract, right? But I think a key factor of success that we have experienced in our destination is that you need to create an ecosystem that can create value and satisfy the expectations not only of customers, but of all stakeholders, the local community, the staff, which is very important, right? Because you need to keep these people within the destination, right? Because if you want to create something real, you have to have a local community. And that's very difficult when you build a destination or a city from scratch where nothing else is, right? So you need to bring in a population, a resident population, and you need to make it compelling. So for instance, over the years, it became more and more challenging to keep our employees with us, right? So what we did in the last 5-6 years, we completely upgraded the living experience of our employees by offering them top-notch staff accommodations with sports facilities, with swimming pools, and with a lot of benefits to make sure that these people at one stage would bring the families and stay with us and live with us.
And I guess that goes back to Anna's point as well about training the staff as well and making sure that the interface between the visitor and the staff is as positive as it can be, because that is your frontline experience, isn't it?
Okay.
That's so critical to the visitor experience in any destination. Abdulrahman, we just had Mario talking about the ecosystem and value. How do you expect to see value demonstrated to these rural communities you're working with? So you've talked about the improvement, social conditions. How do you perceive their lives to change through tourism coming into these rural communities?
So first of all, things have to be done on, I would say, phased manner. You cannot just go and try to make a change, just happens all the time, because you should expect a level of resistance from the local communities. So again, I'll just go back to the before. Once you understand the local context, and then you try to do things through people, through the communities, and you engage them, the communities, you would be amazed. We have done a lot of work in Al-Ahsa in which we have went to SMEs, and they showed us how they cook food, how we came to know a lot of things. How do they do the red rice? There's something called red rice. I never knew this before, which is very famous in the Eastern Province, in Al-Ahsa specifically, which is part of, I would say, the authenticity of Al-Ahsa. So without understanding these things, you cannot build. And then the product that you have designed has to be commercially viable, has to be sustainable as well, and it has to be environmentally friendly, because people in rural destinations, they are very much conscious, because all these farms, assets, they have been inherited. It could worth hundreds of years. They will never sell it. So we need to embrace it. We need to tell them how you can do things better in their assets. By going with that kind of win-win situation, you will be amazed how helpful they will be. And also, what Anna mentioned at the beginning, engaging with them in terms of design, they will love it. Once they see their tradition is getting a little bit more modernized, they really jump on it. So there is a lot to do, but the starting point comes from the investors, from our business partners, before we go to the market. At the end of the day, once you create more jobs, you create more sustainability, people would love it. They see it more permanent jobs. Whatever we're creating are permanent jobs. It's not a temporary jobs. All of this comes to help in one thing. The quality of life is just increasing. So this becomes like a second house or something like this. People would just love it.
And I think it's really important when you're talking about, these farms that have been owned for hundreds and hundreds of years in the same family. That's a very nice, antidote, and I guess a very nice other end of the spectrum from the perceptions that a lot of people have about Saudi tourism development, which is that it is large and very modern and very kind of tech-driven, very premium. So this is what you're offering is really a very rich product diversification for the Kingdom of Saudi.
Certainly, yeah, certainly. Especially, those assets owners, they don't know what to do with their assets. We have seen lots of assets in Ahsa. It has hundreds of palm trees, but it's unutilized because it's been inherited. It's very hard to make money out of it. But now we are helping them how we could make money out of it. How we could have, we are helping them with messy environment as well. How we could have more practices, recent practice in terms of agriculture, in terms of how we use water with more efficient ways, where actually, instead of making losses, this is going to make at least break even to you.
Yeah. So you are regenerating that for them in a profitable, sustainable way.
Our business model crosses with almost every ministry. So it goes with the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Tourism. It goes a lot because it's very much about the social, not more than just the business itself.
And Anna, you touched on technology and its importance in the work that you do, and that blend of technology and design. Are there any kind of specific trends in tech that you're seeing that are really coming through, that are incorporated in your projects at the moment?
There are a lot of things, and usually it comes down to budget, what you can incorporate or not, unfortunately. But for example, taking the contactless technology that you can get today, that through an app you can pay your stay, check in, check out, even get into your room. That's a very technological thing, but if we do the interface in a way where we integrate, local patterns, local people, local ideas, you can start blending the two things together. Then I talked about also the personalization aspect. So for example, we can use these apps so that the guest, before he arrives at the hotel, he can already know the experiences he wants to experience. He can already choose the ambient he wants in his room or the pillow that he wants to use. So again, technology can really be key to tailor-made the experience even before you leave your home and get you into the mood of the place and get you to know the place even before you arrive. So you're there before you are even there. Then, of course, we have other things like the virtual concierge systems or augmented reality or even cultural immersive experiences where you can have, for example, you can have a virtual cooking class with a local chef, or you can have a visit to an art installation by a local artist, all virtual, even before you leave the hotel or even before you leave your home. So all of that can contribute to that authentic experience that you're going to have. I think there are aspects of technology that we can't disregard, like, for example, the sustainability aspect. So there are a lot of technological devices that we can use to promote sustainability and therefore also enhance the comfort of local communities, like what you use for HVA systems or saving water, etc. So I think there are a lot of things. And then specifically, when I think about the Saudi community, I think there are also aspects here that we could reinforce, like, for example, custom-made services. If we think about the interfaces, we could have them in Arabic language. We could have amenities and services that take into account preferences and sensibilities of the Saudi community. We could even, for example, think about a technological aesthetic, what that could mean, integrating interactive art elements and lighting features into the design, for example, that can help. And lastly, I think it's always interesting to get the collaboration of local companies, local tech companies and startups, that, because they are in the community, they can really help to create unique products to be implemented in hospitality. So I think there's a world of things.
Absolutely, yes. I'm aware we're up to time, but I just want to very quickly finish by asking Mario, you've talked about the evolution that you've undertaken to bring the Costa Smeralda from where it was to where it is now. Where do you think it will be in 50 years' time, and what steps are you going to put in place now to make sure it's still a vibrant destination then?
See, a very difficult thing to do when you build a destination is to predict how this destination will evolve in the long term, right? Will it grow? Will it become bigger? How much space do I have to further develop the destination? Is there enough land? What about the carrying capacities, right? The infrastructures of the destination. So we faced some challenges, for instance, in the last few years, because what in the 60s the Aga Khan maybe did not predict it was that destinations around our destination would emerge over decades, right? So today we face a number of visitors influx on a daily basis, 50 times the amount of people that we had 50 years ago, right? So you need more parking, you need more roads, you need infrastructures, huge treatment plants, all these kind of things, right? I think it's very important to take into consideration when you build a destination from scratch. And another thing which is important is that you need to, especially when a destination is publicly funded, exclusively publicly funded, that you create opportunities to allow the public sector to make investments and come in, right? Because what we also learned over the decades in Costa Smeralda is that one player doesn't work. You need more players, right? And you need to involve the locals. You need to make them part of the tourism economy. And I think that's the key of our success, because we managed that very well and we integrated all these things over the time.
So I think that stands you in good stead, because that's very much what you're doing, involving everyone to be part of the journey and the growth going forward.
Yeah, certainly, and probably need to account for flying capsules in 50 years' time, not only the cars. We need to keep something in mind. We are designing not for our generation, Exactly. So we need we are designing for those who are like 5 years old. So we need to make sure that these are things that are flexible, and we consider what they look at, Now, a 4 or 5 years old would tell you the planet, save the planet. We're designing for this age bracket. So this has to be kept in mind.
Very wise words to finish on. I'd like you all to join me in thanking our panel. That was very insightful and interesting. Anna Lobo Martins from ARC International Design Consultancy, Mario Ferraro from Smeralda Holdings and Costa Smeralda Sardinia, and Abdulrahman Abaalkhail from DAN Company. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.